It's an acronym for Reserve Name List, and it's mainly targeted at African governments. So we are calling it the Governmental Reserve Name List. The main or general goal for it is actually to ensure that there's an efficient and effective launch, and also to deter abuse. A good example is you don't want just anybody to go, and reserve Kenya.Africa. You want it to be the government of Kenya reserving that name or using that name in future. So that's why we've developed it. It's going to be giving African governments the priority to reserve names that they consider important from a geographic perspective, from a cultural linguistic perspective, like .Zulu, .Masai. From an offensive name perspective, there are some names that may cause offense from a race, gender, religious perspective. So you don't want somebody, for example, from an offensive perspective, the offensive category, you don't want somebody to go and register Islam.Africa and then use it for racist content. And that doesn't mean that we are in any way regulating content. We are simply just trying to deter abuse of domain names that are linked to the .Africa top-level domain. One of the reasons why the .Africa team has felt the need to make that document public is because one of our objectives is to make sure that the .Africa top-level domain is being managed in a very open, transparent, and multi-stakeholder, way, and so that goes for our policy processes as well. And we all know that the best policy processes are those that allow as many stakeholders as possible to determine policy. And I think we've learned from just the way the internet itself is managed that there's no one stakeholder that can manage the internet, really. It's not governments, it's not the private sector, it's not the civil society. We all need each other to make sure that the internet works. And it's the same principle that's being applied here with the reserve name list, to ensure that it's developed within that multi-stakeholder model, that it allows for what we are calling a bottom-up policy process, allowing for as many stakeholders as possible to comment on a policy document, to enhance it, to make it better, and to make sure that it really applies to the African context. That's why we have a 30-day comment period, and then we collect all the comments and create what I hope will be a better document. What we're trying to do with the reserve name list is not to make it a completely closed policy, because who knows, in about 10 years we may want to review it, we may want to review the categories, because there might be new categories, if not categories that come from our own community, the African community, but also perhaps a new category introduced by ICANN itself. For example, one of the categories that we may want to reconsider that's being discussed here at the ICANN meeting for the past several meetings is intergovernmental organizations and their acronyms. So how are we as dotAfrica going to be dealing with that? Because those discussions are not yet over at the ICANN level. So you see, it's going to be a document that we may want to review, not too often, but at least to review, because even the internet in itself keeps evolving. So we may want to constantly review that. So it's not it's not going to be the end. It is going to be the end. August is going to be the end in terms of we will need to implement the policy after that. But then once we've implemented at least the first phase, we may still consider perhaps in 5 years to review it. It's still quite a challenge, and it's quite a challenge simply because not many African stakeholders participate in some of these ICANN processes. They were not even aware that there was a new GTLD process going on, so some of them are not even aware that there's a dotAfrica, there's a regional dotAfrica TLD. So it's going to be a challenge, not just now, not just previously, but it's going to be a challenge in the long term as well, just getting Africa in one space, to use that slogan, because our issues are to do with access, and that's why we don't have so many of us participating in these processes. And so that in itself is a challenge that will continue, that is being played out in just developing the reserve name list itself, but also in just being part of the ICANN process that has then led us to having an African top-level domain. So I foresee challenges, but then also we've got a lot of ways of dealing with those challenges, and one of them has been working with the African Union Commission. It's a regional organization, it's a member state-based organization, and so they're the ones who are able to deal with our member states, to ask for, initially it was support during the first phase to ensure that we were following the generic top-level domain applicant guidebook. Now that we have passed initial evaluation, the next phase, we are going to need to work with the African Union Commission to ensure that we are reaching out to member states to create awareness, so that the lists are developed according to the policy we have drafted. And so the challenges are there, but we've got quite good institutions that are working really hard. And we've had fantastic support from the African Union Commission, so that has been a strength and an opportunity in itself. Defined offensive as a name that may cause religious, gender, or race-related. And so for some of them it's quite obvious that that they'll probably end up on the reserve name list. And I think it also depends on how the African Union Commission helps us to deal with this, because it will allow all the member states to send in what they may consider at the national level and also at the regional level what could potentially cause offensive and malicious names. So in terms of how many countries we'll need to put in, I think it could be just one who does it, and then supported by the other. I think the potential difficulty there will be the issue of jurisdiction, because I'll take an example. You might find that one name is considered offensive in South Africa. Perhaps maybe a race, a name associated with race, but it's not considered offensive in Kenya. So perhaps it's even considered a name that may potentially be, a culturally or linguistic name that the country may want to reserve and use later and redeem and even make available. So I think that for me will be the challenge, and that's when the African Union Commission comes in terms of assisting us deal with those potential conflicts. It's how to deal with where one name is offensive and in another jurisdiction it's not offensive. In fact, it's a name that might actually be beneficial from a cultural and essentially financial point of view. What we're encouraging the African Union Commission is to create a dispute resolution panel. And how they create that, I think, will be up to them, but a panel that is going to then review some of these potential conflicts. And I can bet you, Sudan and Egypt with the Nile, Kenya and Tanzania with Maasai, Kilimanjaro. Some of them might not necessarily be geographic names. It could be like the current problem we're having in terms of a trademark and a geographic name. A good example is we've just finished with that discussion at the Governmental Advisory Committee, where Amazon, which is a very, very well-known brand, had applied for Amazon, but then it's a geographic region. And the rules are clear, and for us, the rules are clear as well. So if that happens, the African Union Commission, even as the moderator for the reserve name list, it's quite easy. The difficult ones are the ones that you're dealing with the member states directly, where Maasai, or